Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Appeals Hearing Board meeting for Monday, August 28th, 2023. Thank you for your patience. We had a little difficulty getting signed on to Zoom, but we are ready to go now. Chair Hawkins?
Good. Well, I will call this meeting to order. And we have two things on the agenda. One is first the review and approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Oh, sure. I'll let you do roll call.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Board Member Milich.
Here.
Board Member Justin Chang.
Here.
And Chair Hawkins.
Present.
Okay, let the record reflect that all board members are present.
Okay. And it's been a while since we've met, so nice to see everyone again and introduce ourselves to a new member.
Sorry, clarify for the record that board member Glenzer is absent, and so our alternate member, Mr. Chang, is here.
Good. So on the agenda today, well, there's a few things. It's been a while. A few things I'm supposed to say. What are those?
So we should have our clerk give a statement on how the public can participate.
Okay.
Excuse me. The City of Monterey is committed to safe attendance of its public meetings. Masks are recommended for all who attend, except for those who are younger than 2 years old or have a medical condition preventing from wearing a mask. We ask that attendees in the council chambers keep their phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference and feedback within the hybrid meeting. The City of Monterey seeks to continue to offer virtual methods of public participation in meetings. If you aren't joining us in person here in the council chambers, there are two ways to virtually participate in this meeting. You may join the meeting directly on Zoom.gov using the Zoom app on your computer or mobile device. You can also call into the Zoom meeting. To join the Zoom meeting on your computer, smartphone, or telephone, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearch.org. To call into the Zoom meeting, dial toll-free 833-568-8864. Then enter the meeting ID. The meeting ID for this particular meeting is 161-117-4797. And if prompted to enter the participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment using the Zoom app, you can virtually raise your hand by pressing the raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. If you dialed in by phone, raise your hand by dialing *9, then unmute yourself when called upon by dialing *6. You must do both. Public commenters will be muted until it's their turn to speak. I will call each each speaker in the order of their hands raised. Please stay within the time limit that will be established for today's meeting, which we will show a countdown timer on the screen. If you are connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Today's meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account, which is accessible at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10 seconds delay, and on Comcast Channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. As always, we look forward to receiving your public comments.
Okay, we will proceed. I assume there are no consent items. There's none listed. So we will go on to approval of the minutes from February 24th of this year.
So move.
Okay, and I will second it. Any comments or questions? And only you or I were here, so you will abstain. And I will second the motion. And
I do believe, if I'm not correct, that Board Member Chang can vote on those minutes. Is that correct, Attorney Salama?
He can. He's indicated previously. Why don't you state for the record your decision?
I'll be abstaining if you recall the vote. Yeah.
You will abstain?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do a roll call. Board Member Hawkins
yes.
and Board Member Milich.
Yes.
The motion passes 2-0.
And now I ask if there are any public comments.
These are just general public comments for items not on the agenda.
At this particular time, there's no public comments.
Okay. So we will move on to our agenda for today, which is the appeal of Vicky William and Murphy of the Forestry Division's decision to deny the application for removal of a Monterey pine tree at 650 Martin Street. One of our favorite subjects, which has become very popular lately.
So I'll just state for the record, I'm Karen Salama. I'm the Assistant City Attorney and I am representing the board today. I have not had any contact with Deputy City Attorney Christian Wellish or the Department of Parks and Recreation staff regarding this matter. We implemented an ethical wall and have not communicated. With respect to the hearing procedure, this is an informal hearing and the formal rules of evidence do not apply. The board may consider any evidence or information deemed relevant and reasonably reliable. In this instance, the city code provides that the appellant has the burden of proof and it is a de novo hearing. So with that, if any of the board members have ex parte contacts they would like to disclose for the record.
An
I
ex
see.
parte disclosure. Yeah, on Saturday around 11 o'clock, I went to take a look at the tree. I spoke with both, I believe it's Vicky and Jennifer. Brief conversation with Vicky, not to the substance of the decision. She asked a procedural question about whether the decision had been pre-decided. I indicated negative.
And I also drove by, pleasantly surprised. I have lived up on Mar Vista Drive all my years until graduating from high school, drove by Martin Street, and now I live right behind Monterey High School on Herman Drive. And as I drove by, I was pleased. I didn't even know, living here all that time, that you were there, and very nice development. And I enjoyed visiting it and seeing it. I don't even remember when it was built. When was this complex built? Yeah. Right. Okay, good. I'm amazed. You're hidden behind, back away from Martin Street. I didn't even know that was there. Very nice. Thank you.
Chair Hawkins, did you speak with anyone when you visited the site?
No.
No, okay. Board Member Milich.
I just need clarification. The burden of proof is on the appellant and the degree of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now officially open this. And what does that entail?
We'll
What-
have the staff presentation begin.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon. Is this on or no? Okay. I don't see the green light, so. Okay.
Oh.
Good afternoon. I'm just gonna make an opening statement and then you'll hear from the staff members themselves. It's
Could you give us your name for the record?
absolutely. My name is Christian Wellish, Deputy City Attorney. I represent the department in this matter. So what the evidence will show here is there was an application, and prior to that, staff members had some contact with the appellants here in this case regarding that tree, and they made an assessment and felt that the evidence to show the necessary justification for removal of the tree was not there, but they were open to being persuaded by more evidence. So the staff suggested that if you can present an arborist report that shows sufficient evidence to justify removal, then the permit will be granted. Well, the arborist report came in, staff reviewed it and felt that it was still insufficient. So staff reached out to the arborist to get additional evidence, and that additional evidence was never provided. Instead, they received an email stating we will not provide any additional information. So therefore, the permit application was not approved.
Okay,
So it's as simple as that. We will just basically go over that report and take a look at what the city staff looked at and why they felt that it was insufficient. So to get right to the point, I'm going to call my first witness, and I'll step away from the podium and I'll scroll right through the report that's currently up on the screen. So on this, and I just want to check with the assistant city attorney if we should give an opportunity for an opening statement before I present evidence, or no? Or the opposite side?
No, we can do presentations by each
Okay.
side and then
Then I will proceed as planned.
thank you.
So the first witness will be Tice Norton.
And just so everyone knows, that report is also on page 5, packet page 14.
I'm sorry? Oh, understand. Got it. Thank you.
generally we haven't done that in the tree appeals. If you would like, or the board would like.
It's informal.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think it's necessary. You can proceed.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, my name's Tice Norton, Assistant Forester for City of Monterey.
Could you briefly describe your experience? Your employment, your experience.
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in forestry and natural resources. Been working for the city for about 8 years. Previously, before going to forestry, I was the park supervisor. I've worked for PG&E as a consulting forester as well. And then they in a couple different roles for PG&E, including estimating arborist for them. But yeah.
So when did you first encounter the felons in the state?
Sometime in the spring, we did have or even before that, because we did have, they did have a permit for another removal for that property. I believe they had an arborist report for that as well. My co-forester, Mike Tope, he handled that one as well. So I knew we had some correspondence there. Later on, they asked us to come out for a concerning tree. Couldn't find the exact date for that meeting, but we went out there. My co-forester and I went out and met them at the site, looked at the tree. They told us their concerns and their intentions about what, how they want to pursue removal. Yeah.
Just to read that, so prior to this, there was another.
You need your microphone on.
Microphone.
I'm sorry, my mic was not on. I'm sorry. Okay, so prior to this tree that is at issue here, there was some tree removal regarding other trees on that property. Is that correct?
Yes, there was other trees that were approved for removal on that property.
Okay. And so you'd mentioned that the appellants here expressed some concern about this particular tree, and at that time you went out to visit and make an inspection. Is that correct?
Somewhat of an inspection, just to observe what they were concerned about. So yeah, we did a basic visual inspection of it. Also did a visual inspection, but also some probing. So we do a little bit more. We had a probe and felt the soil a little bit as well. So at that time, the soil conditions were a little bit wetter. So.
And when you say we, you mean yourself
And my co-forester, Mike Tope.
Okay. And what was the result of that inspection? What was your assessment?
Nothing was, obviously we were on limited time, but we didn't see anything obvious to us to show that the tree was compromised. We explained that if they wanted to still pursue removal, an arborist report would be necessary.
And why is that arborist report necessary? Is that to show more evidence, or what is the purpose for that?
Yeah, I mean, an arborist report, an arborist who's going to go on site and inspect the tree is hopefully going to be able to have more time than we would to really do a more in-depth inspection of the tree and find find reasons for removal versus our limited time to assess a tree. Especially kind of informally like this first meeting was, so.
So then I guess, is it fair to say then that you left an open mind in terms of being able to be persuaded by an arborist report if it showed enough evidence for removal? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so how long after that did you receive the application?
I believe it was May 27th. We received the application and the arborist report.
And I take it you reviewed the arborist report?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And what was your overall assessment of that report?
I think it was a truthful assessment. However, I thought it lacked, we needed evidence. A lot of things were observations and theory about the way the structure of the tree. We wanted some evidence or some pictures of something of some sort to show that these are characteristics that would undermine a tree and make it more unsafe. But so we wanted to keep them open-eyed about it. So that's why we wanted to see if we can get some more information from that report.
Okay, so to clarify, the report itself did not convince you that there was enough evidence to remove the tree, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then after that, because you wanted, let me just ask that a different way. After that, did you reach out to the arborist who wrote that report?
Yeah, I believe it's the same day that I was out there, the same day or the next day. It was one of the two. I did make a phone call to Mr. Bellecci to talk about his report. Yeah.
And what was the purpose of that? Why did you reach out to him?
I've done that in the past with other arborists. Want to know where they're thinking, what they saw, see if they had anything else to show for his findings. And also just give them a heads up. We're probably going to ask for more evidence, maybe go for, and as probably we'll talk about is probably a secondary or level 2 assessment at least be done at a minimum to help given an opportunity to provide evidence for the things that he's thinking are factors that make that tree unsafe.
So let me just pick up on that. You mentioned different levels of assessment. What are the different levels of assessment?
So there's 3 levels of assessment. The visual specialist is level 1, and that's what Mr. Bellecci did. And the second one is a little bit more involved, a little more hands-on. You could knock on the wood if you want to try to detect if there's cavities, some rot, decay. As we were doing, we used soil probes to kind of feel around the base just to make sure we're not missing something really obvious. If the tree was going to uproot, if you're putting a probe in the soil, you're going to feel an air pocket in there potentially. So, and then the third one is much more in depth. You're getting more invasive with the tree, trying to find the character of the tree and what the makeup of it.
And so what level of assessment was presented in that report that Mr. Bellecci wrote?
It looked like it was a visual inspection.
So that's a level 1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you characterize the inspection that yourself and your colleague did?
You could say that we did a second level, but just because of the separating that we were using some tools. Using binoculars, trying to look up into the canopy, using soil probe. We had other tools if we felt necessary to use it. So, yeah.
And then after you had reached out to Mr. Bellecci, what was the follow-up to that? Did you receive any emails or anything after that?
I didn't research from Mr. Bellecci. My co-forester reached out via email, told him our plan of requesting more information to pursue the removal. And then I believe we got an email response saying that we would not be receiving any more information.
And I believe that email was included in the packet as exhibit. I think it was attachment 3, I believe. I'm gonna go over the report, and I think I'll thank you for your testimony, and I'll call the other witness, your colleague, Mike.
Don't leave yet.
I'm sorry,
Is he through his testimony?
I have another witness.
No, well, I know, but I want to cross
We want to
examine.
ask questions.
Mr. Turner, do you have had a chance to read the the packet of information?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
so you have it in front of you. Would you please go to item page 20, packet page 29?
Not sure mine's numbered quite that same way.
Tree removal appeal information.
Okay.
I'd like you to review the overview. Item condition 1, 2, proximity and placement. 3, property tree history. 4, climate and environmental challenges. And see if there's anything inaccurate in there.
Sorry, I want to make sure we're looking at the same thing. We're on page 29, is that right?
Right.
The only thing that we can corroborate are some of the things about such as proximity placement, where the roots are. And that's some of the things that we're keeping an open mind. If we could get pictures, we get something about that, that would be helpful. The tree history, we can't speak for the past years back of what any tree failures. Mike and I haven't been here that long and we don't have record of that, but
Well, there's nothing in there that you take exception to.
no,
Okay.
I don't believe so.
And so in your estimation, more physical evidence was needed of the deterioration of the tree in order to determine that it should be removed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Tice, if a tree's not sick, what would be sufficient for you to allow removal?
6, are you thinking only if it has a disease
Yeah,
or
it doesn't have a disease, no bugs.
no
like-
bugs, no disease?
Yeah.
We would look at the overall structure of the tree, kind of have, we make reference in this report as well. So looking at the structure, looking at overall site conditions. Yeah, there's so many things to take. It's almost no trees. Site conditions are quite the same. It's very unique from tree to tree. So
Have you ever approved removal of a tree that wasn't sick?
yeah, and sometimes yes, we have, and sometimes is for the betterment of a stand of trees. Sometimes this tree, for example, if you had a grouping of 4 or 5 or more, maybe the removal of one tree would be better for the stand as general. Maybe because they're overcrowded, as an example.
Gotcha. And what generally is your, I guess, standard for allowing the removal of trees? Do you generally tend towards preserving them or?
Yeah,
Trying to get
I
a
mean,
sense of-
yeah, we don't have very many denials. We have a lot of, most of our permits are to a great degree is approved, very much weighted more approved. But yeah, we are trying to preserve as many trees as we can. I mean, that's our, we've been given,
That's your,
Monterey is a forested area, so we're trying to manage the forest as best we can. So
okay.
I have another question from my very personal standard. I'm a architect and I designed our church, the Living Hope Church Nazarene at Highway 68 and Jocelyn Canyon Road. And I've been to you more times than I like because we have Monterey pine trees on that site and around us. And we've cut down, with your approval, about 5 or 6 mature Monterey pine trees, but they were all showing pretty extreme dry needles turning brown. And that may be from our site because we're kind of on the edge of the Monterey pine forest where they grow. And those trees often that whole site was cut down for another development that wasn't approved. And then our church bought it. And those were existing trees, but I think our site is a little, I'll say dry, and especially the last few years with the drought, our trees have been damaged to the point of dying with dead pine needles, very apparent. Is it, I suppose that's only one of several causes that would cause a pine tree to die and be allowed to be cut down? Or are there others like that? And the reason I ask that is there's no evidence of any dead pine needles on this particular tree we're looking at. They're all appear to be fairly green and
Yeah, at the time of
Healthy.
inspection, yeah, like I said, it's been a few months since we've seen the tree, but yeah, it was very healthy at the time. And yeah, you're a little bit further out, a little bit on the edge of where that the fog could burn off a little bit
Right.
faster.
we
So-
agree.
And I think you have a tree actually that's on its way out again too. I just
We do.
driving by. So but yeah, there's different kind of site conditions
Mhm.
over here especially on this slope. I don't know the soil characteristics, but what's very consistent, from skyline down to here is a pretty shallow topsoil,
Mhm.
clay, thick, heavy clay. But yeah, so you're asking what the difference is between these?
Well, this tree that we're talking about, I haven't intensely looked at it, but all the pine needles seem green and well alive.
It might have to also do with looks like there's a drainage on the backside of the property, may have a little bit more access to water.
Right.
That might play a role into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Tope. I'm the Assistant Forester with the City of Monterey.
Could you
I'm-
project, please?
Was that?
Louder.
I'm Michael Tope, an Assistant Forester with the City of Monterey. And I'm a certified arborist and ISA tree risk assessor. And I've been in the tree care industry for about 12 years now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you as well as, you also inspected this particular tree, right?
Yes, correct.
And you also reviewed the reports.
Yes, we have.
Deputy City Attorney Welch, is your microphone on?
I'm sorry, I turned it off. It's back on now. So let's just review those questions. So you stated that you also inspected this tree and you've also reviewed this report, correct?
Yes, correct.
Did you inspect this tree at a separate time or did you do it both at the same time?
We did the inspection initially when we first went to the residence before the permit was applied for. Tyson Norton and I both inspected the tree. And then afterwards, we did the inspection separately on our own time.
Okay, and what was the result of your assessment of this tree and whether or not it could be or should be removed?
We did a visual assessment and also a level 2 assessment with basic tools. We found the tree to be healthy and we decided to deny the permit application for removal.
Okay. So I'm going to go over the report that is currently on the screen, and I'll just highlight some of the reasons that were reported, that were identified in this arborist report. So let me just scroll down to the first one. But first, actually, so this report describes the characteristics of this tree as approximately 100 feet in height and relatively close to the residence. It says about 6.5 feet from the Murphy residence. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And I believe the report also indicates that this tree was healthy, but it nonetheless found reasons that it posed risks. The first one of which is a high risk of failure by uprooting. Do you see that on the report there? On the
Yeah.
screen?
I could see that in the report.
It lists in support of that some recent incidents in 2018 through 2022. So within the past 5 years in that paragraph. Now, does that necessarily show an indication as to the odds or risk of this particular tree?
I think based on our inspection, probing around the root zone and trying to determine if the tree has any air pockets or if we see any signs of cracking or any signs the tree might have a root zone failure. From what we could see, the soil looked pretty intact and the roots looked pretty healthy. And the tree's also been through, you got to think, several storms. And the tree is still holding up, and you look at the canopy, it's pretty healthy, but overall, when we look from a different areas, we went up on different streets and looked and tried to determine exactly where the wind would be coming from, prevailing winds or winds during storms. And it looks like the trees held up pretty well, and from what we can see, it is pretty good overall canopy taper and trunk taper.
Okay, so it's safe to say that the other incidents don't necessarily have any sort of impact on the determination as to whether or not this tree should be removed.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, the second reason listed in the arborist's report is a high risk of failure of the large codominant stems near the top. So first, could you describe what is a codominant stem?
A codominant stem is a place where you have, typically it's lower down on when you have two trunks growing out on the tree. You know, a lot of times we'll get included bark in between the trunks, and a lot of times that'll have a chance of failure when there's a lot of weight on both sides of the canopies. In this case, the codominant stems are all the way up in the canopy. Typically, if you're able to do any kind of mitigation factors to reduce the weight on the canopy, you lower the chance of failure.
Okay, let me just kind of interrupt so we can digest all that. So, you mentioned that this could be a risk, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a higher risk if it's lower down as opposed to higher up. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And is that because if it's lower down, there's more weight associated with that split that you
Yeah,
described?
exactly. There's more weight and more height to deal with two separate trunks with varying weights.
Okay. So if it's higher up, it's lesser risk. All right. Now, you also mentioned something about the tree bark. Could you elaborate on that, or how that could pose a risk?
A lot of times when you have the codominant stems, you have included bark. So there's a weaker branch attachment between the two trunks in the tree. And you also have a chance for moisture and various debris to get in the trunks, and that has a higher chance of failure.
Okay.
Um,
So with this phenomenon of codominant trunks, is it fair to say the risk comes in because of the particular way they develop, such as that the way you described the bark being grown into it? And
correct.
okay. Now, was there any evidence of that in this report?
From what I can see, there's no visual pictures or any kind of indication of exactly where the defect would be that it's explaining on the report.
Okay, thank you. Let me move on to the next one. So the next risk that's mentioned on that report is the risk of failure of the main trunks. And what it identifies is a crook or a stress point. Are you familiar with that part of the report?
Yes, I am.
And could you describe to the rest of us who aren't experts in the industry what it means?
From what we could see on the picture, from what he's explaining, the crook is, from what you could see, it looks like the tree over time had a little bit of reaction wood around. At a young age, the tree probably started growing a certain way towards the sunlight, from what we can see.
So what is described here as a crook, and I think it uses the term, let me see here, that it's typically associated with a wound or a crack. Did you see any evidence that in this case that was the result of a wound or a crack versus, say, just a natural change in direction or bend in the tree?
From what we gathered, it looks like it's a natural growing process. Typically with a crack, it would be pretty obvious, especially when you use binoculars from a certain distance.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then the next risk factor identified is a high risk of damage to the Murphy Residence Foundation. What can you tell us about that?
From what I've seen found for foundational damage, a lot of times we'll have an actual crack going up the foundation. And then also it says on there, like it shows the actual measurements. But in most cases, if we would get an engineer to come out and write a report to state exactly how they believe the structure is cracking. There's also no pictures to show any kind of foundational damage.
So is it fair to say that you have one conclusion expressed there, but there's, as you said, no pictures or other evidence to back that up? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Now, this report also states that there's no reasonable method for mitigating all of these risks. Did the department agree with that assessment?
But there's no reasonable method to mitigate the risks. From what we gathered, we think there definitely could have been a lot of pruning, such as weight reduction and thinning out the canopy to reduce the wind load during storms.
So is it fair to say that if these risks are real and not just conclusions that the report has jumped to, then that they could be mitigated through proper pruning? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, overall, this looks like to the untrained eye, it looks like a fairly sophisticated report. But you mentioned that it's lacking in evidence. Is it fair to say that it jumps to conclusion based on generalized characteristics as opposed to evidence in this particular case?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, thank you.
I think it just needs more, like we said, we asked for more evidence to back the basic tree risk assessment. More evidence, you could use different tools to determine if there's internal decay, various defects on the tree. But visually, from what we could see, there's no obvious defects. Canopy looks very healthy. We even went as far as probing around the root zone, and everything seems like the tree would be healthy.
And you mentioned you did ask for more evidence, but the appellants never supplied any, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, thank you. The board may have questions for you.
I'd like to ask one question. I often drive up from my house to get to Pacific Grove through Skyline Forest. And during this last winter with the rain and winds, there were a lot of trees in that area that were blown over by the wind. But I do not see near that impact down lower on the downhill side of where the winds always come from the west. Is this, from that observation, I would say the wind factor is much less here than at the top of Pebble Beach and Skyline Forest.
Yeah,
Would that be correct?
that would be correct. From what I've seen, when I go on top of Huckleberry Hill, it's catastrophic up there. It's almost
Yes.
like a hurricane came through because it's very top of the hill, all the winds coming from the coast.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like some of these areas are protected from
Right.
wind patterns.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all the evidence we have.
Okay.
Kristen, I got a question. Did you write the argument?
Do you
Or-
mean the decision,
Yeah.
the proposed decision?
Or is that Karen? Did you write that or Christian write that or?
No,
the-
staff
Staff wrote
for
it?
the department submits that for
Gotcha.
consideration.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just had a quick question though, on item page 41, second paragraph, first sentence. There's a reference to immediate danger. Is that a standard that's used for this? Like, does it have to be immediate danger for removal? I'm just curious because it's written in the decision.
Sorry, I'm trying to find where we're at.
Yeah.
41. Yeah, second
So-
paragraph, first sentence.
You go to.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
Second paragraph, first sentence, there's a reference to immediate danger.
Right.
I'm just curious, is it an internal standard? Is that, or is it just sort of advocacy? Hey, it's not immediate danger. That's why we're not giving the approval.
So the relevant standards are quoted in the previous page
Right.
in the discussion section. So I don't think there's anything that matches that word for word, but it's more just a
Or
part of the
ad
argument, I
hoc
guess.
Or something internal, just, is it like
Yeah.
a rule you guys use at home or?
No, if you go to the packet page
Yeah.
11, that's the criteria that's actually in the city code, I believe, for that the forester applies when they're evaluating
Right.
tree permits. And then the
When-
board has these additional factors that go,
Right, because when I read section 37, I didn't see any reference to immediate.
no, immediate danger is not in the code.
Right.
Mhm.
So to kind of give a more thorough answer to that, I think the intent of that is to indicate that at this time there is no danger, and that doesn't foreclose that in the future there might not be some evidence of
Okay.
danger.
I do have a question now. What is the normal average age of a Monterey pine? What's the lifespan?
The relatively short-lived trees, I would say 80 to 100 years, roughly.
So this one's what, 80 to 90 years of age?
Yeah, I believe so.
So it's got a few years left, maybe. Or
I
maybe
think
not.
based on the overall health, it's, what would you say, Tice? At least 10 more years, 20 more years?
Yeah, that's that we can't determine.
It's hard to determine.
Right. Would you know?
It could be much younger based on overall water and nutrient absorption
I
and,
don't want to hear anything about 80 not being healthy, okay? I'm 81. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Very fine.
Yes, that concludes the staff
Yeah.
presentation.
So then it'll be the
Sure.
appellant
Okay.
for their presentation.
And this should be on. Y'all can hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Jen Murphy. I live in 640 Martin. I'm going to make a statement and then I'm going to hand it off to Vicky, who has a statement, and she might actually walk through depending on how she wants to roll with this. And then I'm going to wrap it up with another statement. So the first one that I actually wanted to address today was about some of the factually incorrect information in the packet. So I want to actually start off by saying that the Forestry Department's documentation on package pages 10, 11, and 47 refers to the Monterey pine tree at 650 Martin. This is incorrect. The tree at the center of this appeal has not and has never been located at 650 Martin. It is located at 640 Martin, as evidenced by the original permit application and all correspondence with the city, including the Assistant Forester Michael Tope's terse denial of our application back on June 14th. The second thing that I wanted to bring to light is that on packet pages 11 and 48 in the department's documentation, it is stated that both foresters inspected this tree, probed the soil, and concluded that the tree was not going to be a hazard and that it posed a low risk. This is factually incorrect. Only one forester, Tyes Norton, came to our property on June 7th to inspect the tree. Tyes rang my doorbell. He spoke with me, and he informed me that he would be inspecting the tree that day. Per the 5 Wi-Fi cameras we have across the property, including the HOA, my cameras, and Vicki Williams's cameras, Ty stayed on the property for approximately 15 minutes doing his tasks alone. Before leaving, he also interacted with the homeowner at 600 Martin. So just want to highlight here, Michael Tope did not inspect this Monterey pine tree as part of this permit process, yet he is the assistant forester who issued the denial, asserting that he himself was not approving our permit. His official denial was sent on June 14th, and it read as follows. Per my inspection on June 7th, 2023, I am not approving the removal of the Monterey pine tree in question. Further, his permit denial did not provide us findings or specific standards identified to support his decision. We still haven't received those, by the way, and those are due to us as per the city code, section 37-10, subsection B. So today, what we really want to do is highlight that the city's records capture today that we believe that the forestry department's process, actions, and assertions to be both sloppy and negligent, as evidenced by their contributions to this packet and their handling of the permit process. And then also, I do want to just say here, and I don't know if you guys want to take this into account, I believe that Michael Tobe's assessment in his statement today should be kind of disregarded because he never came out to look at the property and he never came out to look at the tree as part of this permit process. So I don't know if you guys want to ask me questions about that. I can hand it over to Vicky and then I can take us back up. But go ahead.
Jennifer or Vicky, do you guys have an attorney representing you or anything like that? Do you guys?
No,
give me
we
counsel?
don't. But we do have video that we brought today of Ty's walking the property to do his assessment.
Could you take a look at packet page 49?
Or yes, I am there.
Yeah, go to the bottom and then look at number 3.
Yes. Evidence or testimony presented by the applicant that demonstrates the extent of concern or anxiety caused by the tree. I am highly anxious. I can sit here all day. I'm sure you guys don't want, okay. We can definitely do that. I do have a subsequent statement, but I wanted to give Vicky the floor. And this was just to highlight these inaccuracies in the initial packet right now. So I'll keep that of note. If you don't have questions about the specific inaccuracies that I highlighted, I'll hand it over to Vicky momentarily. Sound good? I'll be back in a minute.
Well, on this particular question, I'm Vicki Williams,
Sure, Vicky.
650 Martin Street. 650 Martin Street, and on your particular question about anxiety, we've had 2 arborists say that that tree is dangerous and it needs to be removed. So right there added a lot of anxiety. The end of the year, December 31st, around 3:00 in the afternoon, a tree fell on my garage, a pine tree. And it wasn't an old pine tree, and the winds had whipped it around and it landed on my garage. So that added to it. I'm a little uncomfortable. I've been on the property 32 years. I have been the treasurer for probably 25 of those years. And we did due diligence through all of that and still do. And we had arborists out on our property every year doing a walkthrough. So I feel like when a couple arborists tell me that a tree needs to come down, and it's probably, when it does, going to hit my house, I'm a little anxious. So that's the anxiety. So we'll see if the tree takes me out, that's 80 plus years old, or I'm going to take the tree out, who's 80 plus years old. We're going to see who wins. Okay, that do it for anxiety?
Well, is this your entire presentation or are you giving?
No, I'm answering his question.
Okay, this is your time for your presentation.
Yes, if that works for you or not.
I've said it's your time for your
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, prior to our first application for approval for a permit to remove the tree at 640 Martin Street, both Ty and Michael Tope came to the property in early May, and they reviewed our concerns and were on the property for about 10 minutes with both Jen and myself. At this time, we stated our safety concerns and we're aware that the tree appears healthy. At this time, they stated that we needed to get a full arborist review of the tree and submit it along with an application and the fee for $146.50. I submitted this information to their office Thursday morning, June 1, with the signature of the Mirabella Oaks president, my signature as a board member, and my check for the fee. On Thursday, June 8th, we received an email from Joe Bellacci, our arborist, stating the request had been denied and that the city needed more information than the 12-page document already provided at the cost of $2,124. Our options were to move forward with the appeal process within 10 working days of the denial date of June 7th with an application request to the city attorney's office and the cost of $208.50 or drop the request. On May 12th, Monday, Jan contacted the City Forest Department by email requesting the reason for the denial to be sent to us. The permit to us as the permit requesters, which we had not received. The response arrived via email on Wednesday, June 14th by Mike Tope, stating, per my inspection on June 7th, 2023, I am not approving the removal of the Monterey pine tree in question, period, with no further explanation. Nick stating, to pursue the removal of the tree, you may file a request for appeal by submitting the request for appeal to the city attorney's office, along with the filing fee of $208.50. This notice was received 8 days after the original denial date of June 7th, leaving us 2 days to submit the appeal application on the 10th day, which fell on Friday, the 16th, which we were able to do. Interesting to us was that Mike Tope, as far as we know, was not on the property June 7th, as Ty Norton was the city arborist that was on the property that day at 11:30 a.m. to around 11:47 a.m. for a period of about 17 minutes based on the footage of my outside camera. I happened to be home that day and working in my kitchen and saw Ty walking down the driveway in front of my house towards 640. He also rang the doorbell at Jen's house and briefly spoke to her, letting her know he was on the property. Now, after two arborists who have stated the tree at 640 Martin is dangerous and needs to be removed, expenses totaling $2,479, and no explanation of why we have been denied the permit by the city forester, we are at the appeals board hoping to obtain clarity of the past denials and hopefully obtain approval and move forward with the removal of the unsafe pine tree. According to the definition of the city code 3710, safety to humans and structures and property. Thank you. Oh, and if you want a copy. Here is where Mike stated he was on the property and that he was denied. I don't know if you want to go through what we submitted of the pictures. Does anyone have any questions for that?
I was going to actually draw their attention to packet page 39. Mhm.
One more thing.
Sorry, I didn't get a copy of that.
Trees being removed. You'll see in our packet, there is. What? Oh. Sorry. In the packet, you'll see that there was a healthy tree that they approved to be removed. And it was on our property. And it was hanging over the neighbors at 700 Martin, which is not a part of Mirabella Oaks. It was frightening if you looked at it. And as you can see the pictures, it's like an upside down umbrella. The tree was perfectly healthy, rather young. And yes, we were concerned for our neighbors as well. And it would mean that we would be paying for it. And yes, they did approve removing a healthy tree. Thank you. That's it. Sorry.
Did you have any questions for Vicky?
No, thank you, Vicky.
She can always hop back up too. I did want to draw attention to go back and address Councilmember Chang, Councilmember?
Yeah.
Board Member Chang's question about my level of anxiety. So I wanted to draw attention to packet page 39. That is a view of my deck. That was less than 4 years ago. You can see the damage to the roof of my dining room. You can see the deck is annihilated. That was done by another tree that was otherwise healthy on the property that fell. And this is less than 5 feet away from the tree in question today. So this is exactly why I'm anxious. There is such a history of on this property of healthy falling trees or healthy trees falling and causing devastating damage. So I will share that over the winter, I was sleeping on my sofa every night when we had all of those winds coming through. It was terrifying. I had my dog on one end of the sofa and I was on the other, and I slept like that probably for a month and a half straight because of that tree. Again, looking at that photo, you see the windows on the second floor. That is my bedroom. That is my primary bedroom. That is where I sleep at night. It's terrifying. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close with my last statement to kind of nail all this home, and then I can open it up for questions. So to date, the Forestry Department still has not addressed or provided any reasoning why and how this tree does not create a hazardous situation, other than simply making an assertion the tree is not a hazard and that it poses a low risk of failure, again on packet page 11. In contrast, in accordance with the tree permit standards, we have provided ample evidence via the 12-page arborist report, which begins on page 14, and our written statement beginning on packet page 29, that this tree presents a high risk of uprooting. It presents a high risk of a codominant stem failure and a moderate risk of main trunk failure, each of these creating a hazardous and dangerous scenario for both 640 and 650 Martin addresses. Our documentation details what, how, and why this tree's advanced age, its size, its lean, and its design are all hazardous, why its proximity and placement are hazardous, and how the property in question here has experienced a pattern of healthy trees falling, which have resulted in multiple dangerous scenarios like that's pictured on page 39. We've also provided ample evidence that Mirabella Oaks routinely consults tree experts and arborists and maintains trees on our property to protect both residents and homes. And on packet page 48, the Forestry Department asserts that proper pruning can greatly reduce or eliminate this tree's fallen limbs and uprooting. But this mitigation measure does not address that this tree is approaching its end of life. It doesn't address its exceptional size. It does not address the root system that's intruding in my home's foundation and under my home. It does not address the almost 10-degree lean towards Vicky's house. And most significantly, it does not address the high risk the codominant stem failure of this tree presents. It is a very common structural failure point of Monterey pines, as evidenced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in multiple academic studies, which actually conflict with Michael Topes' statement a moment ago. They say that the higher the codominant stem is, the more significant and detrimental that can be in a higher failure point. So our Mirabella Oaks property is named for more than 100 coastal oak trees that are scattered across our 1.5 acres. And I have 2 protruding through my house. I have 2 oak trees coming right through my roof. My house is designed around them. We love trees on our property. And these trees are also in jeopardy if this Monterey pine fails. So excluding the Monterey pine that we're talking about today, we have 165 other trees on our property. 24 of those are mature Monterey pines. All of these contribute to our city's urban forest and the peninsula's beauty. We're here today to advocate for the removal of just one dangerous old pine tree so that we can plant a new sapling in a safer location, which will in time replenish and contribute to the peninsula's overarching canopy for the next 75 plus years. The documentation here that you've seen presents and details multiple foreseeable hazards that this tree presents, and we're doing our due diligence and upkeep to ensure the safety of people and property. By preventing the removal of this pine tree, the city of Monterey is willfully jeopardizing both the safety of people and property, and shall bear this burden and liability when the above risks become reality. Thank you.
Pat Benza, also in that neighborhood, not in that property, but I just wanted to mention the anxiety. This past winter, I had 3 trees sitting on a hill above my bedroom. And
Tell us your name, please.
Pat Benza, Monterey Vista neighborhood.
You've got-
And I panicked during the storm, especially after the one right on Soledad fell down and we were without electricity for a week. And just like Vicky and Jennifer sleeping on the couch on the other side of the house. I was told to get the arborist, which I did, got the arborist. He came out on Thursday morning. I had tree removal people there Thursday afternoon who said, oh yeah, this is dangerous. We'll be there tomorrow morning. I didn't have a permit yet. So I called out to Parks Department, the forestry, and said, I will be out there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning or before 9 with the permit, but I am getting these trees down. I was not given any hassle whatsoever. And at that informal meeting was told, we are changing our stance with the city, or the city is changing its stance in that the residents come first. And if you feel anxiety and feel threatened, then the trees need to come down. I don't even know why this has got to this point. I mean, these women do not feel safe because of one tree. It just seems crazy that such an issue has been made over this one tree. Thank you.
I want to address that real quick. In reading the code in section 37, the arborists can't take that in, they don't take that into consideration when making their decision. However, this board does.
Correct.
And so we've talked a little bit about some of the employees and in my experience, the employees at the city are
Well, maybe
well-meaning.
we'll save this
Yeah.
for deliberation. Are we gonna close the
Are we close
public
this?
hearing? We need to do public comment and then give each side a chance for a reply.
Thanks, Karen.
Mhm. Is there any generalized, general public comment? Or public comment on this item from non?
At this time, there's no public comment.
Chair Hawkins, would you like to set a time limit for each side for a reply?
Yes, and I think that's appropriate. Is 5 minutes adequate, normal?
Mhm,
Okay.
Yes. Mhm. Let's hear from the city first. 5 minutes.
Or you can waive it if you want.
Said board member Milich, hopefully.
That's not a suggestion.
Thank you. Okay, that is on. All right. Thank you. So I just want to briefly sort of summarize and kind of go over the bigger picture of why we're here and how we got here. And we've heard a lot of discussion about anxiety because that was a question posed by the board. And I don't doubt the sincerity of these women when they talk about anxiety as a result of these trees, especially in light of these recent storms that happened and toppled certain trees over. It's understandable that someone might feel anxiety because there's a tree in close proximity in a house to a residence, let's say, or something that might cause damage, especially when, as you have heard, previous trees have caused damage to property. However, that's exactly why that should be taken with a grain of salt. That level of anxiety is not what determines whether or not a tree should be removed. That's what gets us to a point where we test to see if there's any real reason to remove this tree. Is it actually going to cause damage? Is there a likelihood that it'll cause damage? Otherwise, we'd have an open standard where anyone could stand up here and say they're anxious about a tree for whatever reason, say they would like a better view, but the tree causes them anxiety and then we remove that tree. That is not a workable standard. So I don't suggest that you shouldn't take into consideration or completely discount any level of anxiety that's caused by a tree. What I'm suggesting is that you have to have some sort of scientific proof that that tree has a rational connection to that anxiety, that it is likely to fail, that it's going to cause damage. And in this case, we had the employees here who have no agenda. They're not here because they want to deny all permits and they just want to deny all removal of trees. In fact, we've heard one of the ladies here testify that there was a previous application and there were no issues with the removal. Well, I submit to you that each case is evaluated based on its own facts. And when there are reasons to justify removal, that permit is granted. Now, what happened in this case is the department was far from closed-minded on this. They reached out and said, hey, you've provided a lot of conclusions in that report based on generalities, but you have provided very little evidence to form a firm logical foundation for those conclusions. You mentioned these generalities about certain characteristics of trees and likelihoods and whatever based on who knows what. When pressed for additional evidence, unfortunately, the appellants didn't provide any. Now, the burden of proof here is on the appellants. They have to convince this board that the decision made by the employees the city has hired and maintains for that purpose was wrong. Now, again, I submit to you that the department doesn't go out there and say, okay, we're just going to deny every application. They're more than willing to consider the facts and grant applications as necessary. But based on the inspection here, which, as you've heard testimony, was a higher level of inspection, not because of the time spent, but because of the nature of the intrusiveness of the inspection, of probing the ground and looking at various things. And of course, taking into consideration what had been submitted in the previous report and trying to verify that. They couldn't get that verification from going out there themselves. They went ahead and they went the extra mile, called the arborist who produced that report to ask for that additional information, and they didn't receive any. That's a failure of evidence. It's not anything else. Now, having said that, I do understand the level of anxiety, but this board should not feel any anxiety about the sort of threats of what will happen if the board doesn't approve this and the board doesn't deny this, and then you'll have to live with the consequences. That is, I probably don't have to lecture anyone on this board, but that's not a consideration for this board. It's based on the evidence presented. So if there were evidence that this tree, this healthy tree that the report agrees is healthy, despite appearances needs to be removed, then the permit would have been granted. But no such evidence was presented apart from however much it costs, certain conclusions and fancy words wrapped into a 12-page report that I submit to you may have other motivations behind it than to present an objective picture. Other than that, if the board decides that the tree should be removed, there was a proposed mitigation measure of planting 3 trees in its place, and that is something that the board has within its discretion to order. So that would be the backup option for us, but it's just based on the standards, the applicable standards, the sufficient evidence has not been presented that this tree, that there's a sufficient risk level associated with this tree to present removal. And I submit to you that the level of anxiety without being tied to anything else is insufficient on its own to justify removal of the tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Not too much to add, but a point of clarification here, because I'm not sure if it's come across accurately or inconsistently, but the permit application was submitted with the arborist report in hand. So both assistant foresters actually had the opportunity to read that arborist report in depth before they came on the property. So they were fully informed and were able to review that. And I feel like that's counter to his statement there a moment ago, but it was all submitted in one go. Now, I do want to point out here that this is the oldest tree on our property, more or less. It seems to be. That's what multiple arborists have told us. And as you've seen and as evidenced in packet page 29, this tree is estimated to be between 80 and 90 years of age. This tree is approaching its end of life. There is not much life left in this tree if you go by average standards. And I think just in summary, the points that I want to make are really what persist on packet page 29, 30, and 31, which is that, again, the condition of this tree, it's classified as an exceptional size by the Department of Agriculture because it has a 45-inch diameter. That is terrifying. That is absolutely going to pulverize anything that is in its way when that tree falls. It is of advanced age and it has that stem flaw, that codominant stem. And if you stood there and looked at this tree from the property, anywhere on the property, you can see that if stem A falls, it's going to take me out. It's going to take out my primary bedroom, as you saw in that photo that I pointed you to earlier. And if stem B falls, it's going to take out Vicky, because guess what? Vicky's master bedroom, her primary bedroom, is right there on the same side of the house. We can wave at each other from our bedrooms. Terrifying. Now, it's not only close to 640 Martin and 650 Martin, it is also within easy proximity. If it decides to fall not on 640 or 650 Martin, for example, it can easily take out 600 Martin, which is the historic property, which has been around for over 100 years. It is Herbert Hoover's old hunting lodge. That sucks if that happens. But also there are also bedrooms there and somebody could get hurt. Now, again, I do want to kind of close by highlighting the tree history on our property and how so many trees have fallen over the last 5 years. The afternoon, it was about 2 p.m. on December 31st. We were all, doing our day. It was, another rainy day. If you think back to New Year's Eve last year, it was pretty abysmal out. It was just gross. I'm sitting there upstairs reading a book and I hear the biggest boom in my entire house reverberated. And I said to myself, oh my God, what was that? And I can't see anything. I see the deer running towards the high school. And I go out front on my patio and I look and I see this huge tree has just fallen and it's like right over Vicky's house. And like before even running outside, I'm already calling Vicky and we have the residents from 600 Martin running out to make sure that Vicky's okay. And that if she was home, that she's all right, because this tree is like obliterating her entire garage. Thankfully, Vicky was fine. She was home. We were all really shaken because it came out of nowhere. It was windy, but that is what put us on edge for the next 3 months after that, with all of the subsequent storms that we had coming through again and again. And that's why we are all sleeping downstairs and we continue to sleep downstairs. It sucks. We don't want to remove trees, but we just want to be safe and healthy. And we have so many on our property. We're just looking to remove the one tree that can present a danger, especially as we're heading into what is forecasted to be another really damp, pretty crazy winter. So please just keep that in mind. And that's why we're here today. We're just trying to do our due diligence to make sure that everyone is safe and that our property is safe, but mostly our people are safe. So do you have anything to add? Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this point, the public hearing's closed and we'll take it to the board for deliberation.
Okay. What are your comments?
You want to go first?
Well, sure, okay. Staff has a different job from what we have. Looking at justification for the anxiety, there's a lot of that here. You have the past history of trees falling on the premises. This is the oldest tree. The devastation that would be caused, the loss of life, perhaps, certainly destruction of the foundation of houses. It justifies the anxiety. Now, normally speaking, oh yeah, I'm very anxious about this, without anything to back it up. To me, what I've just said backs up the feelings justifiably. 149 trees on the property. You look at what's required other than anxiety, it also says, what effect will it have on the removing the trees? Well, it will have virtually no effect, especially when we can require them to replant under direction of city staff. I think city staff was doing its job. I just don't think that they're set to consider all the things that we are in deciding whether or not it's justified his anxiety. It's justified in removing the tree. I think it is. And as for me, I would, if it's necessary or if it's required or even desirable, I will make that motion after we've had a chance to discuss it all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Having lived here with the pine trees for 60 years, I think there's an advantage to keep planting new Monterey pine trees. If we keep going this way, ongoing, we're going to end up with an old forest. And I think there's advantages to always having new pine trees under development and underway, which will lead to a better Monterey in 50, 60 years. So I keep thinking about that. I think there's advantages to keeping our forests being replanted and developing for the future.
I think city staff did a good job on legal arguments. Well presented. I think the arborists did their job within the confines of the code. Here on this body, we're able to take more things into consideration, specifically your life standards, right? I mean, we want you to be happy and prosperous. That's probably the way I'm going.
And I was going to say also, I'm impressed that you have an arborist out annually. I think that's a sign of care and the future of this little area that you live in. Thank you. You care about.
Board Member Milich, since you made the motion, I
Made
believe.
a motion.
If I could ask if you would amend the motion in light of our prior legal guidance that when a healthy tree, as determined by the forester, it at this point hasn't gone through CEQA review. And so the board, as we've advised in the past, could conditionally grant the appeal and the tree permit subject to completion of a CEQA review by the planning office.
Oh, no.
Well, I would strongly urge you not to do that.
I understand that, but as far as I'm concerned, if they make it, the forester makes a decision. The code says it's non-discretionary. We make a similar decision and all of a sudden it's discretionary. I don't see that.
Well, at
Okay,
this
either-
point, you're taking into
I
account the anxiety.
I understand. I think that we should make a finding that it's an emergency procedure and as such not subject to CEQA. That would be part of my motion,
Okay, so you're disregarding legal advice.
that we will allow removal of the appeal be granted and that the appellants be directed to plant a tree in replacement pursuant to city guidelines, city staff's direction.
Second.
Obviously, we will consult with whether that can be legally issued apart from
I know
CEQA
this doesn't
review.
come as a surprise to you.
Mm.
We've discussed this before.
And I have given you my legal advice in the best interest of the city that CEQA is a state law that the city has a legal obligation to comply with. That requires the city to conduct a environmental review when healthy trees, as determined by city staff, are approved for removal. And unfortunately, the city is subordinate to the state and we must follow state law. I can only give you my legal advice, but you are representing, acting as the city here. And please,
So let's make that as an alternative. We'll have a double motion, a bifurcated motion.
I don't have anything in this packet. So do you have any, do you have statutory guidance for me? Yeah, I'll read it. I'll read it right now and I'll take a look and see if you're right. So whether removal of a healthy tree is subject to CEQA, that's what I'll take a look.
yeah,
You
I'm
guys-
giving you legal advice that the California Public Resources Code, yes, we have had outside counsel review this.
Yeah.
CEQA counsel.
I mean, I've got a license too.
And I don't think SEQA was ever intended to apply to this type of situation.
I've studied CEQA as well. So I'm. like I
Well,
said,
we
I'll take
can
a look at
recess
it.
and come back then if you want, or you can. I'm not going to give you a memo on an attorney-client privilege memo on the stand and read it out here. If you want to recess and come back, we can do that.
Can we do a bifurcated motion? Do the motion that I have, or in the event that that's illegal, that this it then be approved with CEQA.
Well, I have told the board it's illegal.
Let's do both of them. Either or.
Wait, can you clarify this for me? Just because this is my first time. It sounds like you guys have had this out before. So you're saying that removal of the healthy tree is subject to CEQA? Right,
And CEQA review has not been completed.
right.
You may conditionally grant this permit subject to completion of CEQA review.
It's not gonna get done. Just-
And it was like, what's the practical delay on the CEQA review? In other words, we make a decision, comply with CEQA, what are we talking, 6 months, a year, 18 months? Which is why, to me, it's an emergency type thing, because we've got the winter coming on, we've got a possible El Nino. And putting them in an emergency situation, and I don't want to do that.
Well, I will say, I have been defended the city in CEQA lawsuits where attorney's fees totaled over $1 million.
Who's on the other side
So
of this though? Who's bringing that case?
we have a lot of people in the community.
Right.
Any person can bring
Well, I
a
know it can't,
CEQA
that's what I'm saying.
lawsuit.
Is there anyone on the other side of it right now? Or is this kind of moot at this point?
I don't view it as moot. There are many people who in our community who view trees very
No, no, I agree,
strongly.
but is there anyone that's actual plaintiff now?
They wouldn't be a plaintiff until we
Until
take the action.
And what is the initial study time delay? What are we talking about?
I believe planning staff generally advises approximately 6 months.
If we didn't,
That's past the winter, so.
Yeah. If we didn't get sued, would there be an issue?
I always advise my
No, I
client
understand.
to obey
I
the
understand.
law.
No,
You advise, we decide. That's the difference.
You do decide.
Okay, I don't, then my motion is my motion.
That into the CEQA framework. So it's not when someone brings a cause of action, it's just,
What do you mean?
Uh,
I'm not clear on your
yeah.
question.
I'm done.
It's an emergency situation in light of the fact that it has to be done before winter, but we can't get an initial study done before the winter goes, so it becomes an emergency. All right? That's how I look at it,
Right here.
and that's why my motion is what it is, and it's an emergency procedure.
Well, I would just, the reason CEQA is required is because the city arborists have found it to be a healthy tree. So that's why,
I understand
Or
that may be the case, and we can also find it's an emergency. In light of the fact that it's gonna take 6 months to get it done, and we're looking at El Nino, and the winter will be done before 6 months. I mean, it's like, closing the barn door after the horses are gone.
Karen, can you give me a quick and dirty 5 minutes on CEQA? Do you have that ability? Because you brought it up here. I'm just curious, like, can you just lay out the statutory framework for me so I understand?
So the California Environmental Quality Act requires local agencies such as the city when they are taking discretionary action. And so because in this situation, the foresters, the city code requires, okay, healthy tree, danger, those kind of things. We view that as a ministerial action. They check the box. Okay, that ministerial actions are not subject to CEQA review. When you have discretionary review, such as when you are looking at the anxiety factors, the visual prominence, the aesthetic beauty, all of those are what CEQA would consider to be discretionary factors. You could go either way on it. It's not just, okay, healthy, not healthy. Discretionary actions by local agencies are subject to review under CEQA.
Give me a statute.
Can we do this?
No, I
Can we-
can't give you
can we
off the top of my
require-
head a statutory citation. It's in the Public Resources Code.
Can
of
can we
the
issue
state.
the removal and then require an initial study to be done after it's removed?
No, that violates CEQA because you can't do, it's a fait
Can
accompli.
we
thing.
just throw the whole damn CEQA thing out the door?
There are many people, including Governor Newsom, as you will read in the paper, who propose alterations and streamlining CEQA. That is out of my hands.
I think there's some ways to consider this in a positive way with that because we end up with 3 trees rather than 1 tree.
And CEQA, ultimately, as you go through the CEQA review, there's a process called a mitigated negative declaration where you say, okay, there are substantial environmental effects here. We're taking down a healthy tree, but we are going to mitigate that by planting 3 trees. This is what the CEQA process does. Or, if it's a bigger development, we're going to take out 100 trees, but then we're going to plant all these other trees over here. There's all different kinds of mitigation measures, but CEQA doesn't allow you to just go around it. It says, okay, you have to complete these steps. You do an initial study if there isn't an exemption. Then you file a mitigated negative declaration, and that actually all goes to the state of California.
Karen, what are the exemptions?
There are approximately 15 exemptions. We have had outside counsel look at this. The exemptions do not apply to a single healthy tree. There are some very specific exemptions. And again, I'm happy to recess and come back or give you a memo offline. But I do not have encyclopedic recall, and I will say CEQA is very dense.
I'm going to make a suggestion too. If you guys are going to go forward on decisions like this, you guys should have that reference in here, right? Because if the board makes a decision and legal counsel is going to counter and say you can't do this because of CEQA, that should be in the packet. It's got to be in the packet every single time.
Well, so we never provide attorney-client privilege memos in there,
Just put the statute in.
but
I'm not asking you for privileged information.
okay, well, I have provided the board with this privileged information. I didn't know we were having an alternate today. They have all been provided with this information previously. So I apologize that you did not get that memo before today, and I'm happy to provide that to you.
This was going through my mind earlier as I was reading this. What if we'd go ahead and plant 3 new trees and let the existing tree continue to grow until we find a significant problem? Yeah, it's noted as a healthy tree. What if we give it a time of review in 5 years or 10 years to review it, to cut it down in that future time when it becomes unhealthy for some reason? But in the meantime, we get the advantage of 3 new trees starting to develop.
That doesn't give the relief to the felon.
For the.
I know.
I mean, I don't think you have authority to require planting of trees absent it as a mitigation where you're giving them the permit, mitigating it with something else. I don't know if you're saying,
Enough.
So in other words, the most that we can do for the appellant is to get step one in the process going to remove the tree. Is what you're telling us.
Mhm.
I mean, I wanted to double check. I don't want to see it, but, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, then I
It
guess
should
we'll have
be-
to
it
do
should
that
be Part
because
of the public document for them as well, not just for the board. It should be for the
Because
public and for the appellate.
it's if we go ahead and do it the way that I want to do it, and then the city attorney says, no, it's not valid, it's going to be kicked back. And we'll be wasting everybody's time and effort on that. So the best I think we can do is just grant the appeal and say that if and when the tree is removed, that they replant 3 trees at the direction of city staff. Everybody copacetic with that? We have a second on that?
I could second that, but I want to hear Karen, what Karen has to say first.
Is that one okay?
sorry, could you repeat it? If you can remember it.
He wants to approve it, but plant 3 more trees without a citation.
Plant 3 more trees, grant the appeal with 3 more trees. And then just leave it at that. And if it turns out that they're told that they need to comply with CEQA by staff, they have to do it. So in essence, what we're doing is we're granting the appeal, but we're not allowing the removal of the tree.
So your
I don't think
grant,
That's up to us.
Huh?
That's not up to this body.
Right. Well,
what?
the removal of the tree?
Or you were saying that we would approve the appeal, but not the, maybe I'm misunderstanding, I didn't hear you.
What we're doing is we are sustaining the appeal by the appellant.
Yeah.
Okay, that I guess we just say that just sustain the appellant's appeal and that when
And then they're essentially going to
the
be.
tree is removed, that three trees be planted subject to, at their cost, subject to city staff direction. And then, of course, now the reason I do it that way
Yeah,
is it doesn't talk about having to remove the tree.
right.
They grant the appeal. Then if they want to go ahead and have the tree removed, they have to go through the CEQA process with the initial study.
Does that make sense what he's saying? So we exclusively sustain the appeal. Whether they remove the tree or not is up to them. So if we sustain the appeal, but they don't remove the tree, there isn't actually a sequel. Is that the
Well,
sequel?
we're not,
Or it's not tied to our.
we grant the appeal, but that doesn't grant them the right to remove the tree.
But
Yeah, you see what it's.
I mean, I guess practically speaking, so your the appeal is the denial of the tree permit. So
Of
but
the permit, the denial of the permit.
yeah, I mean,
So
I
we're
think
Narrowing our decision, which is,
I,
that would be allowed. And
from
then
a
if-
practical standpoint, though, what does the,
Well, we
Right,
can
with the
still
per-
grant the permit subject to CEQA review and
Yeah.
approval.
well, that's what I said.
No, no, no,
That's why I
Yeah.
say grant the appeal.
Okay, so you're gonna grant the
So the-
We
appeal.
wouldn't put it, whether it's subject to sequel is up to them if they pursue it. It's not up to us.
Right.
We would just leave that out.
We're
I think we're
not,
saying,
we can't
Karen-
make that decision. When they go into staff to get the tree permit, they will be told you need to get an initial study. Or would you rather rather than deny that we set aside the denial? Is that,
So you want, so essentially you're going to say we're granting the appeal and directing staff that,
we're granting the appeal. And if you want to proceed, you're gonna have to go and get a permit from staff. And staff is gonna require that they do an initial study and a CEQA review. Otherwise, why are we even listening to this thing? Because we have no authority to do anything.
well, I guess I don't understand why we don't just say you're granting the appeal and conditionally approving the permit, subject to the CEQA review.
Yeah,
Okay. I think that's what we've done in the past with these. We have granted the appeal. approve the permit conditionally subject to CEQA. Or I want to make sure. Or,
Well, what if in the meantime, the council comes back and says that this is granting an appeal is not by this group is not a discretionary thing? What if it says it's a ministerial act? Much as the
so
act
that's
of,
not a city council determination. That would be a legal determination if we went to Superior Court. So whether something is a discretionary approval, it is pertinent to the CEQA analysis, and that's a state law, and there's been 50 years or so. I mean, CEQA's been around a long time.
why don't you tell us what we can do?
Well, I think we're on the same page that,
Okay,
okay, you're going to grant the appeal
right.
and you are conditionally approving the permit for removal subject to completion of the CEQA process.
Reluctantly, I so move.
I'm gonna leave that to you because I'm not comfortable seconding it.
I'm not
Because-
comfortable doing it either.
Because of the lack of disclosure from you. It's not in here.
Yes, I mean, it's
gotta be.
stupid to have CEQA involved in this. It's dumb. I can see it in a
Well,
large,
And for the record, the CEQA determination for staff's action is in the packet. It's under the environmental section.
Help me out here.
The CEQA, there, in every agenda packet, there's always an environmental determination. The issue is that
What
staff,
page are you on here?
packet page 10, that the board's action is changing from the staff determination. And so a different CEQA review needs to take place.
I'm glad I retired.
Me too.
I used to do CEQA.
Yeah,
No,
it's,
why you give me the quick and dirty then. Karen, I'm not getting on you. I just want to know.
So Alicia, how you doing?
Christian, good job presenting too. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I'm good with it.
okay.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you. Karen.
Okay, we'll have a roll call. Board Member Hawkins,
Yes.
Board Member Milich,
Yes.
and Board Member Tank.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is passed 3-0. That concludes this item. So if you'd ladies like to head out, please feel free, or you can hang out for a little bit while we finish up the meeting.
I think they'd be leaving, but thank you, I think.
Have a good one, guys.
Board member comments, if you have any.
Welcome, your very first.
No, I want to say, I think Karen did a great, Christian did a great job. I just want to say that I think the arborist acted well within the code. So. And thank you, Alicia.
And I do see the difference, but it just ticks me off.
You're just making me work today. Okay,
I mean, some of my,
Justify that unconscionable salary.
Any other comments from the board members? Staff?
I just see all these old trees aging more. I'd like to see some new ones coming up. That's a part of a sustainable forest. And I'm not even sure what that means in all that we've just discussed.
I think CEQA needs to be readdressed in more than one area.
Well, and just for the board's awareness, our office has been working on a revision to the tree ordinance that would go before a city council and hopefully address some of these issues.
Thank you for being so patient with.
Because we do recognize it's an issue, and we would like to try to find a way that we can address it. I'll say that.
You guys, you were great. There's nothing you did wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I think if we're all done, we are adjourned at 5:49 PM.
Thank you.